Welcome to the Great Noticing Podcast with Marianne and Emily.
The Great Noticing is about our awakening as people, professionals, parents, and leaders. Noticing empowers us to unravel the old narratives that dominated and defined us.
Noticing supports new patterns and celebrates behaviors that help us create and step into the life we desire. What are you noticing lately?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Great Noticing Podcast. I'm Marianne Means-Dufresne.
And I am Emily McAnally.
And we are so blessed to have an incredible community leader with us today, the inimitable Leah King, who is currently president of the JPS Foundation. As many of us know here in Fort Worth, came to JPS after being CEO of United Way. JPS, of course, has an incredible role in the community of safeguarding our community's health and well-being. But in addition to Leah's leadership at JPS, she's also an elected official. Some people don't remember this, and she serves as president of the board of directors at Tarrant Regional Water District. She's also a board member at Fort Worth Club and T3, which we know is Tarrant To and Through Partnership. And she serves on the President's Advisory Council for Texas Wesleyan and lives, of course, here in Fort Worth with her husband, Barry, who we also love. But Leah, we are so excited to have you and excited to talk about the things that you're passionate about. And so what have you been noticing?
First, just let me say thank you for inviting me. This is great to be here with you two today. It's a way to cap off a great week. And we're capping it off with me noticing a lot of signs around the community for people running for different offices. And it got me to thinking about voter turnout, frankly, over the last couple of cycles. Primarily, I'm talking about for local races. And candidly, we're not doing so hot. We can do a lot better.
Yeah.
And we just don't have the level of engagement in elections, but in civic engagement in general, in my opinion. So that's what I've been noticing.
Yeah. And you're personally invested in that because you want to hear what voters think and speak to the needs of the community, but also educate the community. So I'm sure you're personally invested. And then from the perspective of what Fort Worth needs, that's important to you.
It's true. I don't think that I paid much attention to voter turnout. I just always had a habit. I am a voter. I'm a voter in every election. I was raised that way. I used to be taken to the polls with my grandmother. So it was just a part of life. And I didn't recognize that that was an issue really back until former Mayor Price started Steer Fort Worth. And when she was talking about, that intimately well, right?
Yep.
And that's when I started paying attention to the numbers. And frankly, I was just shocked that literally 10% of eligible voters can make decisions on people who are developing policies that impact my life, your life, all of your listeners' lives day to day. And that's more important to me than the presidential cycle that comes around every 4 years, candidly, because most of what they do doesn't impact me day to day.
Right.
Whereas the local elections do, whether it's school or a municipality, water district, community college. I mean, all of these things are impacting us and our families every single day.
That's right. And a lot of us think, and maybe it's because things have worked really well for a long time, that we feel like these systems and these structures we can trust, they kind of run themselves. But we're now seeing a generational shift. And this is what I've noticed is the signs have names on them of people who are my age. It's not like the parents and the grandparents are running anymore. I was like, Skylar O'Neill, she's a mom at my school.
That's right. That's right.
And
you are the second person to say that to me this week.
really,
And what the first comment was, I know those people that's on the sign. Like I know them personally.
right.
And so to hear you say that, you're exactly right. These are people who have decided that this community is important to them. And you don't want to be the person that says somebody should do something about that. We are that somebody, right?
Yeah.
We have to be that somebody because we live here. We want it to be a great place for ourselves, but it's got to be great for our kids, our families, our friends. And it's one thing to say people want to come here, but that's why things are changing so rapidly. And having just 10% of the people that live here engaged back when it was 300,000 people in the population, very different than when we're approaching 1 million people, right? And so in order to ensure that everyone's voice is heard, all have to take some time and engage.
That's right. Honestly, the thing that went through, and Skylar, if you hear this, hi. And in my brain, I was like, I didn't know Skylar was interested in water.
Yeah, right.
Why water district? And so
Exactly.
for you, what was it? There's a vacuum of leadership here, really for those of us that may not have paid attention to TRWD and what it does. Why is water district important to us?
Oh my gosh. Well, if you live in the city of Fort Worth or pretty much anywhere in Tarrant County or in an 11 county area in and around Tarrant County, your water likely comes from us. So that means that the city that bills you probably purchased its water from TRWD. So there's nothing more important in our life than water and the air that we breathe. And so ensuring that we have adequate water supply, meaning it's one thing to say we have watering restrictions for our lawns and all that. That's kind of a luxury. But there's never a time that any of us goes to any sink and turns the faucet and water doesn't come out.
Yeah.
That is clean. And if you want it, you can drink it directly out of the faucet. You never give a second thought to it.
Right.
That is why a strong water district is essential. And having leadership there and people are there to ensure that we are doing things the right way, that we have the right policies in place, that we have the right contractors in place, that we have the right team in place. All of that matters. And I cannot say enough that it's an agency that people need to be paying more attention to.
Wow.
I have to jump in with a personal anecdote that supports exactly what you just said. I actually live in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm feeling very convicted by what you're saying about civic engagement because, frankly, I don't think I've ever voted in a local election. And I'm sorry to say, but I feel like I have to be honest and authentic here. And just recently in Richmond, right after Christmas break, so like all the parents have had all their kids home for several weeks and we're ready to send them back to school. There was a nominal snowstorm that came through. I think it literally was like 2 inches of snow, and it knocked out our water supply. We didn't have electricity. Then the pumps froze at the local water plant because, come to find out, several years ago, they had been told you need to replace these pumps. And whoever it was, the powers that be, chose to not prioritize that. So then years later, the whole city, and then it started impacting adjacent counties,
Correct.
right? So the whole city had no water for like a week. And when you just said, we're so lucky to be able to turn on our faucet and clean water comes out. I was like, that has never felt more true than it did I mean, I was living that where if we had to go, we were, well,
I was your hell week.
that was, yeah, that was like Bud's week in like the Navy SEALs. Like I was a stay-at-home mom, Navy SEAL, boiling water that I had to rely on friends to drop off their like excess bottles of water, and then I would boil it. And you know what? I'm sure as heck going to vote in that next election.
Where's your next water board leader?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. So think about it. When we had that terrible winter storm in 2021, that literally the entire state got shut down in a lot of respects. The water district, well, there was nothing within the state code that prioritized water districts' electricity.
Oh, wow.
And we were very close to having our water shut off. Now, it's one thing to say the water is shut off. It's another thing when you have a 108-inch water pipeline and water is not moving and it freezes in that pipe. And when it thaws out, it would have been catastrophic
Wow.
to multiple communities. And so ensuring that not only that you have a strong water district in place, but that they have the relationship and lines of dialogue to state and federal leaders. It all has to work together. And that's why the water didn't get turned off, was that we were able to connect with one of our Texas state representatives and urgently request that he get to the right folks to prevent our water from being shut off. It would have devastated multiple communities with flooding. Once it's just unimaginable what could have happened. I am very sorry that you had to deal with that, but you understand that these are the things that are, we just take it for granted that it happens automatically. And I think Marianne is the one that said, because things have worked so well, but there's a reason that they've worked so well. But we are the ones, like, it's on us now to be part of the reason that it continues to work well.
That was something I was noticing when earlier on, Mary Ann, when you brought that up, was my privilege. Like,
Yes.
I probably haven't voted in local elections because my life has been pretty great. I haven't
Right.
had any, issues that have really come to the forefront for me that maybe I should have, but I've been really lucky to have my local experience be pretty pleasant.
Yeah.
The one quick thing, last thing I'll say about my water experience. So Marianne is so thoughtful and is always sending gifts, which is great for me because and she had sent me this package of things for the girls. I think this was like at Christmas or something. And inside of it was a little gratitude box of like little gratitude cards that you're supposed to open and like pick out one each morning and, say a little mantra of gratitude. I kid you not. I'm in this, Buds week of hell. And I'm like, I've got to do something. So I open up this little gratitude box, and the first card was like, be thankful today that you have running water. I swear. I told you this.
I don't even remember that.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
Hell, joke's on you.
What? It's the gratitude box of irony.
Right.
Well, be glad that you wear a size 2 pant. Yeah, right.
For today.
Oh my goodness. That's
It
wild.
was pretty funny. I did get a lot of social media traction out of that post. I definitely made a post about it. So thank you. It had some legs, but I don't know. Yeah.
What I'm interested in, Leah, is was it like just a casual email that they sent to you, like, "Hey, just FYI, we may be shutting the whole region's water off here shortly," or how did they notify you of that?
No, you know what? That part I don't know. That would go to the staff. They just called me and they were like, "Who do we know?"
Yeah, like you haven't boss.
Yeah, but think about it. I mean, ERCOT was going through and kind of systematically shutting off, neighborhoods at a time to conserve, to make sure that healthcare systems and truly, truly life and death places, but they didn't think about any of the water systems being life and death. It's no disrespect to them. They obviously had their arms full, but it did cause, folks to come back around the table after all of that finally passed to reevaluate the list that they were working from that was considered essential and making sure that they would never, because that's literally putting the public at risk. The flooding that would have happened would have been
Wow.
tremendous and quite disastrous. So it was a lot of like, somebody pick up the phone, But
I think I'd kind of block that out because I remember we were building our house at that time in an
oh,
apartment that was right near a hospital. So we never, because we were in the apartment, we never lost power or water. But the people in Walsh, which is where we were building, were out for like 2 weeks.
yes, it was a very long time. We had the exact same situation, Marianne. So Barry and I had sold our home, but our new home wasn't complete. So we were living in an apartment in the hospital district. So we never lost power either, but we turned our thermostat down to 68. We were running around in blankets and everything because it's just, we didn't have little ones, right? It's different when you have little ones. So we just toughed it out like everybody else. The house we sold, that neighborhood lost power. The house we were moving into, that neighborhood lost power. And Barry, the sweet man that he is, went to, because the guys were still working on the house.
Oh,
And so he took them hot chocolate and coffee and stayed with them for a while. I mean, I'm like, you are incredible. But get this, they were painting at the time and some of the paint cracked. Like, they literally had to go back and repaint because the paint froze, and when it thawed out, it all cracked, and so they had to go back and do it again. One of those things that we wanna forget, but, in my world, as far as the water district's concerned, that was a really pivotal moment in, demonstrating the importance of that entity and why having that connectivity to other agencies is crucial, but also that local people, if different people were on the board, that would probably mean there were different people on staff. There's repercussions throughout. And so having the luxury, and we have strong leadership in a lot of places. It is a luxury, but it's not automatic. And there are some people that might have ulterior motives that because no one shows up, they end up in office because 9,000 people showed up to vote out of 900,000. And we're like, well, I didn't want that person. Well, so many of us didn't show up.
Yeah.
So there they sit for the next couple of years.
That's right. Yeah. I've heard you talk about before one of the reasons that you've really committed to Fort Worth and why you are committed to showing up is that it's really, you say, even though you've lived other places, the first place you've really called home. Tell us about
Mhm.
that.
So yeah, I never got to pick where I lived. My dad was in the army. We moved constantly. I changed schools maybe 20, 30 times. And it would be multiple times in a school year. Sometimes I would go back to the same school,
Mm,
but I might be there for 2 or 3 months and then gone, and we lived overseas. We lived in Germany for many years. We lived in El Paso for a little while. But because I came here first for a business trip and I fell in love with it, I sent a postcard to my mom and I said, "I wanna live here someday." And I had the opportunity to transfer here in Radio Shack Corporation, and that's how I got to be in Fort Worth to begin with, and I just knew, like, this was it for me. I loved it so much, and I just wanted to stay here, but for me, it's not just about being here and staying here. It's about, okay, how do we keep it a great place? And so engaging with different nonprofit boards over the years, I've served on a ton of them. And I never thought about running for office. And I can tell you, like, it is the strangest thing to do because you are just opening yourself up in a way that is abnormal, in my personal opinion.
mhm.
And some people like it, right? Like that attention and all of that. But if you're more private, which, might surprise some people, but I'm extremely private, you need to know, and that's it. But when you're running for office, people ask you all kinds of things. And when you're in office, people ask all kinds of things. They expect all kinds of things. And so even though I didn't anticipate doing it, I'm so thankful that I have, and I've had the opportunity to serve for the last 8 years. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to serve.
We know the impact you've had in leadership and really helping to usher in this new generation and new perspective on the water board. What's been an unexpected impact for you that you've experienced
Oh,
personally?
I think the most unexpected thing is seeing the impact of decisions in action.
Mhm.
A lot of times, leaders, there's a lot of decisions that you're making. And while you know that they have the potential to impact people, the scale at which the decisions that I get to be a part of, the impact is large, so decisions that we make at the water district, we serve 2 million people
Yeah.
and growing, right? And a lot of what we do is underground. You can't see it, or it's out of the of where people are able to go. And so it's again a very easy thing to not even think about. And that's what you want. That's when you know that the
Yeah.
agency is functioning at a high level. That's
Yeah.
exactly what you want. I am just grateful to be able to see that in action, decisions that I wouldn't in the moment, you don't recognize, the breadth and scope of it.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool to be part of so many things that are impacting our community.
You just mentioned the thing that's part of the problem, though, too, because you said you want it to work seamlessly so people don't think about it.
That's right.
Right? And so it's for any organization, that's the goal is to solve the problem, but in the process of solving it, we have to make noise.
And the funny thing, this is a perfect example. When things are wrong or not going how the public needs or wants or feels that it should be going, then they show up, right?
Uh-huh.
They're there every meeting, they're making comment. We only invest our time, or let me not make such a definitive statement, but generally
Uh-huh.
tend to invest our time in things that are not working.
Yeah. Mhm. Yep.
And we rarely invest as much time and energy in things that are working. And I will say what's really refreshing is there are folks that will come to the water district meetings just to say thank you, just to acknowledge the staff that may have helped them with something. Perhaps they want to acknowledge some of the decisions that the board has made.
Right.
And that is, it's fantastic. Most of the time when we hear from folks, it's because something is wrong, and that's okay. But we'd love for people to be engaged and just to stay in the know. So I'll give you an example. In Fort Worth, we have water restrictions, right? So you can, depending on what your address is, you water a couple times a week, and it's no big deal, right? In the beginning, it was like, oh, I want to water every day, and I hate this, and you can't tell me what to do, and all that, right?
Yeah.
But now it's like it's the norm, and nobody thinks twice about it. Well, not every municipality went to that.
Mm.
There are municipalities in Tarrant County that do not have water restrictions, and it's wasting water.
Yeah.
And what that does is it accelerates the necessity to go out and identify land for new reservoirs. Well, that means somebody's property likely has to go away in order to accommodate. I mean, we're talking, these reservoirs are
Huge.
absolutely enormous, absolutely enormous. And so if we can, through our own behavior, kick that can 10 years, 20 years down the road, and if we're all doing it together, that's actually feasible.
Right.
Decades of waiting versus the imminent necessity. Now that and the water district works in decades, right? So we're looking 50 years out.
Yeah.
In our planning. So it's important that we are mindful of our own use and encouraging our municipalities to participate. So if you live somewhere that doesn't have mandatory restrictions, then maybe you send a note into the mayor's office. Maybe you show up at the city council meeting and say, I'd recommend that we institute this because it's going to save water. Think about it. And we all see it. People are watering their lawns and it's raining outside, or water going down the street. It just, you talk about angry. It
You
just
want somebody
so
growing up at your
frustrating.
house? Let Leah see that,
Right.
right?
Yeah, seriously. Like, I just see dollar signs rolling down the street, because that's what it is. It's a resource that is very precious, very limited, that we need to protect all that we can.
Yeah, that's right. Spring is all about fresh starts, so why not give your skin one too? If winter left your skin feeling dry and dull, it's time for a reset with a facial from Hannah Azul Korean Skincare. Myung Chong has been perfecting skin for 27 years, and her facials are the ultimate refresh. People call it the Hannah Azul Glow for a reason. And to keep that glow going, her medical-grade skincare hydrates, smooths, and revitalizes so your skin looks as fresh as the season. Ready to shake off winter and step into spring radiantly? Visit hannahazul.com to book your facial and grab your spring skincare must-haves. That's hannahazul.com, HANNAISUL.com, because glowing skin is always in season.
Do you have any tips for folks who, I think the obvious one, right, is the sprinklers are going when it's raining, but are there something that we don't naturally think of when it comes to conservation that you wish the masses would do better?
Well, that's one of the biggest things is the sprinkler systems. And literally, in many places where you live, the local water district will probably have some type of program to help you calibrate your sprinkler system so that it aligns with what the city ordinance requires.
Yeah.
And what the weather has showing up. And so the Water is Awesome marketing campaign that runs in North Texas, that's a collaboration between ourselves and one or two other, I think two other water systems. We come together, we pool our money, and we buy media time, and we jointly produce TV, radio, social media spots, and run those. And it just helps people to change their habits. I remember years ago when my son was like, I don't know, he was probably 12, 13 years old, and he was washing the dishes and the water was just running and running. And I don't know how long it had been running, but at some point I was like, shut the water off, right? Like, I don't even think he was standing at the sink.
Yeah.
We as Americans just have habits that can be adjusted, and those adjustments literally add up tremendously.
That's right.
And then you aggregate all of our households and our businesses, and it really does make a difference. So just being aware of our use of water is something that's really within our control.
Yeah.
And we absolutely need to mindful and need to be for that.
And like you were saying, we often aren't aware of that until there's some sort of crisis that
Right.
then suddenly we realize a need for change. I know the city has done some different campaigns, probably in collaboration with
Yes.
TWD about capturing rainwater in barrels and
Yep.
all the different types of things you can do. And thinking about when I remember people being upset about, and like it's un-American for them to
Right. Tell me when I can do this.
water my yard. And it reminds me of back in the 70s when the seatbelt laws came out.
Yes.
And
Yes.
people, I'm not doing that. Same thing. And it's like when change first happens, there's somehow we draw it back to it being against a core value that we
Yes.
hold about freedom, you
Yes.
know? And
Yes.
then a few years later, you look back and you're like, well, that was dumb. This is really better for everybody.
How could I argue about smoking on an airplane?
Well, and like TSA
Right.
for nine
Right.
eleven. I mean,
Right.
obviously, I would like it if you would scan my bag.
Right.
Scan my bag. I don't have anything to hide, but I
Exactly.
remember when I was really little.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you just like
How dare you? Well, it's still not an enjoyable process, but
Right.
like overall,
But the whole family would go to the gate. When we were going back and forth to Germany, the whole family would come out and walk us to the gate. They'd be there waving when the plane took off. You know, that not possible in today's day and age. That's okay.
that's right. We somehow
We said
survived.
bye-bye at home. We just
Yeah.
imagine.
Right.
I didn't lose one thing as a result of that. So
That's right. When you mentioned, the people who often get engaged politically tend to be angry, or
yes.
it's the polarization, and we've talked about that several times on the podcast with Mayor Maddie and Mayor Price. The polarization that's happening in society, it reflects because you've got a background in marketing as well and communications. That the people who respond to surveys, the
That's
people
right.
they're either really really happy or really really mad, and so it's like everybody else is too busy to think
Right.
about it or worry about it. And so, of course, the voices are more extreme.
Yes. And that's the hardest group to reach is the group of people who are like, you know what, things are all right. So I don't really have anything to add to, those extreme voices, all of them, I won't say all of them, I was going to say all of them are necessary. That's probably untrue statement.
You're doing
Uh,
such a good job of not speaking in an extreme way. Good job.
But, contrarians, there's a place for that. And I think that when you have multiple people with different opinions and thought processes that are committed to working together and saying, you come up with a better product that way.
Yeah.
And that's just been proven time and time again. So there is a place and space. What I'm finding more and more is that it's very personal, right? And
Mhm.
people are doing more personal and vilifying individuals versus a process or an ordinance or
Right.
something like that. So that's when it becomes unproductive. And those voices, they're not there to find a solution. They are there to be disruptive, and nobody wins in that situation. And so, it's part of all that comes with the job to an extent. But when you carve out rules around that, that even helps to ensure that you're hearing and you don't have a process that blocks out people that truly want to engage and have their opinion heard,
Mhm.
and that it's not some kind of personal
Yeah.
affront that I just got to get this off my chest. And there are plenty of people out there like that, unfortunately, and they will invest the time. So that middle group that is just okay,
Mhm.
uh, we need more of them to engage.
More. That's right.
have you ever considered, because I'm always in awe of people who run for public office because I, I don't think I could put myself in that spotlight where I'm opening myself up to criticism. I'm opening myself up to some sort of fake news scenario. It's like being on a reality TV show. I just couldn't do it because I don't know how I'm going to be painted or how I'm going to be treated. Have you ever been put in a position where you're like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have done this? Or have you always been like, this is the right thing to do and I'm so glad I'm here?
I try to find myself in the latter camp. I can't say that every decision has been the best decision, but certainly the approach to the making, if I'm consistent there and don't do knee jerk for me, I'm a pretty short-tempered person, but I have some tools that I use to maintain as much of a poker face. Now, sometimes you need to get right with people, right? And I'm very comfortable with that.
To be like, I'm in this. I'm
Yeah.
committed to whatever discourse we are about to have.
There are people in this world that will try to overtalk you, almost bully you. But, I'm from Philly and I'm good with that, right? Like, that's how we roll. So I'm not uncomfortable in that space. And my friends will joke and say, "Oh my God, you made our Philly come out," right? Like, there's a place that it stays. 'Cause it's just really not my natural personality. Try not to be too excitable or anything like that. But at the same time, I'm not going to allow our staff to be berated. I'm not going to allow our board to be berated. If you have constructive comments, you are welcome anytime, all the time. If you have some kind of personal agenda, you're gonna get the boot. And I don't even really say anything. I just kind of nod to our police officers, and they know. Like, I literally just, they'll look at me like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
We're done.
On the
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's literally just a nod. Like, we've worked together long enough where they know I've had enough. Generally, I'm trying to think. There's been very few times that people, for example, that may have come in for public comment that I have ended it. If you try to take more time than is allotted, then that's when we're going to get a little cross, because also being raised military. I'm a very rules oriented person. Yeah. Right. 3 minutes is 3 minutes, not 301. Don't have to take the whole three if you're not taking 301. And when we get to 301, we got a problem. Right. So I'm okay with that. And yeah, the personality types are interesting, but it also teaches you a lot about yourself, and it forces you to tap into spaces and places within yourself that you didn't necessarily even know were there or want to go. But it's been an educational process for me too, in understanding, public discourse and why it's so critically important, and why as Americans we, should continue to do all we can to protect that.
That's right. Does the 3-minute rule also apply to Barry, or does he get a little leniency?
Barry is a man of few words. So,
So he chooses 3 minutes and under.
it's so this will crack you up. When Barry and I met, we met at work. Endless, right? We met at work and we dated for a long time, and nobody knew we were dating because, like, it didn't work out. We didn't want to make it awkward at work.
Sure.
So I remember when we finally did, let people know that we were together. I remember this one lady come here to me saying, how did you get him? And I said, well, we just talked. Barry was not a talkative person. Anybody that knows Barry now, they're like, that's a lie. Like, he talks all the time, writes books on Facebook. He has a lot to say, but he is just selective when and where he chooses to engage. So no, I haven't had to implement the 3-minute rule on him. I have to do it sometimes with his posts, because I'm like, ain't nobody got time to read all that. Like, dude, 5 words, that's it.
Just the headline, Barry.
Just he was like, just cut to the chase, baby. Cut to the chase.
I like to tell my husband Eric is also more reticent, but when he'll get telling a story, and I love this man so much, but he's not a great storyteller. And I'm trying to teach him, like, get to the punchline, and I'll be like, baby, you got to land the plane. Like,
Yes.
land the plane.
I love it. I love it.
Like, where's the get me excited.
Yeah.
Like, get me excited
Take
again.
me there. Yeah. I want it. Like, I want to be on this journey with you. And also, can we bring you to it?
It is like, oh, okay. Is it going to end? Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Thinking about you being private, wanting to provide leadership to the community, but not expose everything about your private life. There are a lot of us like that, I imagine, probably listeners who would say, I'd love to make a difference. I don't want to step into office because of the vulnerability, and maybe I have kids or whatever it is. What would you say to people like that?
I would say definitely consider what office you would think about. In our race, for example, for a water district, and this is my third time running, it wasn't always everybody got along and all that. Elections can be tough, which means that first, you have to have a conversation with your family and let them weigh in on that decision. When I first thought about this, I had a conversation with my mom and my husband, and they were both hard nosed. Hard nosed.
Really?
Oh, hard nosed. And I'm like, you watch too much TV. That's not how it is in real life. You're only watching the extremists. And so we started walking them through and having them talk to friends of ours who were in elected office. And they got more comfortable with it. And they both went from hard nosed to being the biggest champions and cheerleaders that I had. And I'll never forget the first election at the election watch party. My mom was able to be there. And my mom had the biggest crush on Mayor Mike. And, Mayor Mike makes every lady feel so special.
Yes.
And my mom also was like, she was in awe of Rosie because she's always so put together and this and that. But so Mayor Mike came up to my mom and he was like, "Hey mom, how's it going?" And like, "I'm just so proud of her." And he's like, "We're proud." It was just such a sweet moment. And so it really brought more realism into what these races are.
Mhm.
It's harder on the family because there is potential for things in the media. There is potential for another candidate to say something that is not factual, even detrimental. That is a reality of it. Thankfully, for the most part, at these local races, it hasn't happened as much. Now, as you get into some of the state offices, the sleeves are rolled up a little higher and the punches and blows are a little bit tougher.
Mm.
And so long as your family is okay because I told him, I was like, I got this, right? Like, don't worry, like, I got this. I'm good. And if your family agrees to that, then it makes it easier because there's a time commitment that you're away from your family. The commitment from them isn't just that they don't want to see bad things said about you, but it's the time away from them
That's right.
that you need to be realistic about too. But I would encourage anyone to literally get engaged. And among the most rewarding experiences of my life to have served for these last 8 years. Many years very frustrating, many years very rewarding. All in all, it's been just a great experience. And I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. But it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about this with my coaching clients too. It's the stuff that we're in the middle of that's really hard. We can become overwhelmed or overcome by that. That's what we're focused on. But if we're thinking about why and
Mhm.
we're pulled toward our purpose, and that's,
Mhm.
you were speaking about where do people want to lead and where do they have a passion?
Mhm.
It's the passion there and is the purpose there to take you through what will be tough.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
like, don't expect to be protected from it. Do what you can to mitigate it, but go in knowing this is gonna be tough and get tough at times, and then
Mhm.
here's why I'm doing this and why it's so important.
Right.
And I think the tough parts obviously make the joys and the successes that much sweeter. It's like the
Absolutely.
freedom is in the discipline.
Mhm.
You are at your happiest when you are disciplined, when you are pushing yourself, when you are comfortable with getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I need to get comfortable with voting in civic elections.
There you go. For
Yep.
babies,
You can
right?
do it. And then
First.
here's the safety tip. Just vote in the early election because then you can go whenever. Very easy. There's rarely lines.
Right.
You're in and out.
Yeah.
Take about 10 minutes of your time every time.
And
So
and there won't be anybody else there.
that's right.
Great.
That's
No,
right.
I mean,
I
not great.
always vote in the early election. And
Proud anytime that you go, which is so sad for
it's
us.
so sad. It's
Yeah.
so
I wonder if there's going to be some sort of development, like with AI or facial recognition or something down the line that enables people to vote remotely. I know, like right now, we don't have the technology or the infrastructure to enable that. But I mean, imagine
You'll just sit
what
your avatar.
right.
There's right? Send your hologram
Right.
for you.
Right. I mean, honestly,
That would
probably.
hologram.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
That'd be, I mean, how many holograms would you want, Leah?
Ooh,
What
gosh.
for? Like
Yeah,
when,
I was thinking, I was like, I want my business one. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any business hologram?
I want my beach one,
Yes.
you know?
I want them
Yeah.
in different outfits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is life. This is life changing. This is the best idea we've come up with.
Right.
Hogan did ask not long ago, can there be two of you? So this would be the answer.
We're cloning.
Oh.
Yeah.
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 Yes.
Yeah. Because I'm not spending up time with him. Not that like he wants, even more time with me, which he does. But yeah, I know. Little guy.
That's pretty
Tough.
clever.
No,
Can there
it's gonna
be
be two of you.
Yeah.
Sweetheart.
What a
Yeah.
sweetie.
I
It's
know.
like, can I at least have some time with your avatar?
Exactly. Maybe being prefer that.
Yeah.
Mama. Oh my goodness.
That's great.
Leah, I love the things that you've brought out because I think they're at our age, honestly. I mean, you're creeping towards 40. Shut up. I'm like, we're not at our age. We're 8 years apart. So that's fun for me to get to say that.
And y'all are babies to me.
You're
So,
your threshold to be thinking about where the people our age are now stepping into leadership in our community.
that's right.
There's a real mindset shift there around engagement, what's possible when you have kids at home and those kinds of things, and really paving the way for the future and following in the footsteps of people like you, Leah, who have had vital careers. And I think that's new too, that we've looked at
Yes.
retirees are the people who hold these positions. And now we're like,
Exactly.
actually, we can do it all.
That's right. And that's the thing, because the retirees are ready to go,
Yeah.
but they don't feel like they can
Mhm.
because there's not a pipeline
Yeah.
that's been developed. And so that pipeline, so serve on city commissions and boards, serve on nonprofit organization boards, volunteer here. That is literally some of the best training ground.
That's right.
You're prepared to serve to office. And that's what we need. We need to know that we're developing the next set of leaders that's ready to step in and lead.
That's right.
You would be so good at that.
You're kind. That it's a great training ground. And then I'm also thinking about how it expands your circle. So the more it's
Totally.
start with the school, PTA or whatever, and then we're expanding to nonprofits, and then we're expanding to commissions or boards. And every
Yes.
time we do that, people are seeing our capacity and what we can, and then our resilience is actually
That's
growing.
right.
And the process can really be a natural pipeline of development. That's a great point.
It's really been my path.
How do we
you
start?
know?
Right?
Yeah. So true. I mean, I think about how I got engaged in the community, and it started out with me serving on a board of a very small nonprofit. And then, next thing you know, your phone's ringing off the hook. Everybody wants you to serve on their board.
That's
But then that's a good thing, because then it teaches you how to say no, and you have to exercise that muscle. So all of those things are the building blocks to get you prepared
Yeah.
for the next level. We shouldn't just stop there. We should
That's
just
right.
keep going.
That's right. I think you may have inspired us, certainly, but maybe a listener today
Oh.
on kind of how to start that path. Those of us that have, and many of us do, have a natural capacity for leadership, particularly in an area where we're passionate. Great thing for all of us to be thinking about is the importance of engagement, even when we're not dissatisfied.
Right.
And then where are we most passionate and how can we serve in that way? And sometimes it's through leadership. And so what's the first step? I think is a good thing for all of us to be thinking about.
Love it. Love it. I think it's
Leah.
such a great discussion.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us on the Great Notice.
That.
It's been wonderful to have you. And thank you to all of our listeners. Please continue to like, share our content, and let us know, as always, what you've been noticing. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Great Noticing Podcast. Don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And for more information and to keep up with Marianne and Emily, visit thegreatnoticingpodcast.com. And remember, what are you noticing lately?